One of the first things you and I talked about when we met, which is 2 or 3 years ago by now, was your GMAT journey, which was an obstacle you had to overcome before we even started working together. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So I actually started with a GMAT 250 score. I think my GMAT journey started in 14. That's when I found out about the GMAT. I graduated from University of San Francisco, my undergrad in 2016, but I was already looking at business school, options since 2014. And I started researching, the GMAT and the GMAT exam, what it's all about. And I've always come with this attitude that I'm not very good at quant. I'm not an analytical person. I don't have that background in me. And I also personally, and, I would like to share that even though my parents are very analytical and I would say math smart, I don't really have that. It's supposed to be in the genes, but it's not there. So I grew up with this kind of understanding that I'm not smart enough, that I don't know how to do numbers and all of that. Also, English is my third language. It's not even my first or second. So my first is Arabic, my second is French, and my third language is English. I didn't go to English classes or anything like that because when I went to school in France and in French schools my entire life, they didn't really teach us any English. So the verbal side of the GMAT was all new to me. The quant, everything quant related was all new to me as well. And I come to the GMAT world, I was just very insecure about, just how I was going to perform. So I started at 250. And then I think it was years later, I kind of went from 250 to 300s, and then I went back to 200s, and I went up to 500. And I think that's when I started seeing that there was hope, when I started climbing. I think that was my indication that, I can actually grasp this stuff. I can understand it. When I started seeing myself climb, that just gave me a lot of hope. And I just continued at it. And then I basically went from 250 to a 780.
Unbelievable. That's just unbelievable. And do you still think of yourself as not being a numbers person?
I think I'm better at it now.
I think I'm better 780 would indicate that. So what is it in you that stopped you from giving up? Because there were a lot of moments with that 200 and going back to 200 and up to 300 and back to 200 that a lot of people would have said, you know what, I can get where I want to go. Especially as you became successful as an entrepreneur, you're still going home at night and studying. And that requires just a tremendous amount of perseverance and drive to keep doing that. What do you think was in you that made that happen?
What this GMAT journey and what this business school journey meant to me is what kept me going. Really, business school for me is my way of the way I perceive business school is my way for financial freedom. And you remember when we wrote these essays, it was all about financial independence for women and things like that. And this topic touches me personally, right? So for me, GMAT, equals business school, equals financial independence for me, right? And that was my motivation behind all of that. And of course, what financial independence meant to me is, buying a home for my mother and doing these things for myself, securing things for myself, and things that really were very personal to me and still are personal to me, and very close to my heart. And I think what kept me going is really just the reasoning behind all of that. So my motivation led my drive to getting the GMAT score.
One thing that has always struck me about you is how incredibly generous you are about sharing your experience. You wrote an article for GMAT Club before we even started working together on your GMAT journey. And now you're one of the hosts. I don't know if you're still doing it since you started school, but you're one of the moderators at GMAT Club. You and I have been on videos for GMAT Club together. What is it that you enjoy about talking to people who are coming up along the journey and giving that back?
I was in their shoes one day, and I remember how desperately I was reaching out for help, and just all I wanted was someone to give me some hope, right? We ask questions, students, GMAT students, we ask questions, watch all of these videos because we want someone to tell us that, hey, you can do it too, right? That's kind of the thing that we're looking for, right? So the thing that I enjoy the most about doing that is remembering that when I first started, I was seeking help, and it was very difficult for me to find it because everyone was just so busy in their journey. And, that kind of made me feel a little bit isolated at that time. So I think about all of these people that are going through this journey right now that I've been through, and I think I don't want them to feel that way. So sometimes I try to offer like advice, or, I give my time because I know that how isolating and how, hard this journey can be, the GMAT journey. I mean, getting that GMAT score for some people, it's a deal breaker. Like, it can make or break this experience, right? Unfortunately, I mean, I speak with a lot of GMAT students who are currently studying for the GMAT. They have incredible profiles and they have high potential of succeeding in business school and all of that, but they just can't get past a score, you know? And that just, if you can't get that score, imagine how detrimental, like that just damages like you from the inside. It breaks you, So I know, and you're a consultant, so I'm pretty sure you've worked with a lot of students that have had this experience. They come to you, they have this great profile, they're ready, they're motivated, they're inspired, but then they take the test and they don't score well, and then they go back to zero. I've been there, so I know. And that's why I like to chat with students and say, listen, if you were able to even get, a 5 like score increase, like 5 points or like 10 points or whatever, that is your indication that you can actually do it, right? All you need to do is just go in the right path, use the right resources, right tools, and be consistent, just be consistent. And I know that's hard. Like, when you give advice, like, sometimes some people look at you and they're like, oh, you say this because you've done it, right? Yeah, I've done it, but I also started at 250. So I do it because I know I can relate to it, right? So I know how it feels like. That's what I do it.
And remember also that with the GMAT, yes, the GMAT is an amazing experience to conquer that, but there is nothing at all wrong from the school's perspective with switching to the GRE. And now that many schools are accepting the executive assessment, that's another option. And then the fourth option, which a lot of students don't want to think about, or applicants don't, but is possible, is if you can't pull the lever of your score going up, you can just pull the lever of a different school choice, right? A score is only low in relation to a particular school. But if
Absolutely.
you can't get a score that you want, there are plenty of schools that would think that the score you do get is amazing. So people get very focused on M7 or top 15, but there are some incredible schools out there that are just not, that their scores are more flexible. And so there are options.
Jessica. And one other thing I want to mention is, just because I got, like, I think some people reach out to me and they say, well, you got into Kellogg because of the 780. Well, I don't think so, right?
No.
I mean, there's other aspects of my profile. Right, of course, right? But here's the thing, and this is a message for everyone who's watching this. You don't need a 780 to get into Kellogg. You don't need a 780 to get into Stanford. You don't need a 780 to get into Harvard and all these incredible schools. What you need is a good enough thing about every aspect of your profile, right? And I think this is like a super important message. For me, the reason why I was working really hard, and that goes back to that question of motivation, my reasoning behind all of that. What made me really work so hard is because I had a low GPA. And I'm not afraid to say it right now in front of everyone. I actually had a 3.04, So 3.04 with a 780 GMAT, sure, that brings me here, right? So for me, I needed a balance, right?
Right.
And that's why I was looking for that higher GMAT.
And I will say, you did not get into every school you applied to, even with a 780 where it was above the average. And I have seen plenty of people with high score, 780, even higher, who didn't get in
I agree.
at all. And I remember there was one year I worked with 2 people who had high GPAs and 780s, and they were both reapplicants because they had not gotten in anywhere. And what they did, and they admitted this, is they coasted on the 780, and they assumed that would be enough to get them in, and they didn't put as much work into their essays. And so
Jessica, you brought up a really good point here. I remember, so before working with you, if you remember, I had applied to schools and I didn't get in at certain schools that I wanted to go to. I had this level of confidence. No one could ever tell me that I was not going to get to business school. Of course, right? I was thinking, of course I'm going to get into business school. I have a 330 GRE. I have a 780 GMAT. I have a great story. I'm from a pool of applicant that's not really highly competitive or not even competitive, right? So, and I'm a woman, and I was like checking all these boxes we were talking about, right? And then I didn't get in. So I think the reason why I think I didn't get in is because I didn't put as much effort in all of the other aspects of my application,
Right.
because I took that for granted. And I was like, 780, who's not going to take me? Because
Right.
of all these crazy stories that you hear over the internet, all you need is a high GMAT score. No,
Right.
right? You need a decent GMAT score, a decent GPA, decent story. You need to be authentic. You need great letters of recommendations. You need to
And
explain.
you are a perfect fit with the Triple M program. Like, I think there's nothing in your story that stands out as not like, oh, that she's not a Kellogg person. She's not a Triple M person. That school, it just resonates with you. And you could prove that in your applications. Whereas other schools, not that you wouldn't have done very well there, but didn't necessarily feel like a fit. And so I think that demonstrating that fit in the application is so important as well.
And that's the magic of working with Jessica.
Thank you. Very nice of you to say. I've always said,
me.
though, I do the marketing, right? You do the substance, and I help you tell your story. I can't make a story that doesn't exist. So all credit to you, mostly.
Don't underestimate the power of hiring a great consultant, because a great consultant can take you to the right, can guide you to the right way. I wouldn't have thought of certain programs if we hadn't talked about these programs, right? So
Right.
You made me look at this program in a way that's like, Dalal, look, you have this aspect of your story that fits into this program, right? And I think it's very important because it's so much easier to tell your story when you fit into a program versus you're trying really hard to fit into this program, if that makes sense.
I think that's very right. I think that's true.